Es-tu au courant de ce qui se passe à Mégantic?
Ça a l'air qu'il y a un feu majeur dans le centre-ville, c'est l'enfer.
Il n'y en a plus de centre-ville, Richard.
C'est ça que je me fais dire.
Les engins ont probablement parti de Nantes, sont descendus, puis quand ça a rentré au centre-ville, ça tout a pété.
OK, merci.
Il va y avoir des dizaines et des dizaines de morts, Richard.
Oh non.
Train wiped out of town, the Lac-Mégantic Inferno, 2013. Welcome back to Horror Funk Town, where we dive deep into the most harrowing disasters. Today, we're dissecting the tragic events of the Lac-Mégantic rail disaster, a catastrophe that obliterated a small Canadian town in the dead of night. It was a warm July evening in Lac-Mégantic, Quebec, a town where everyone knew each other by name. As the clock struck midnight on July 6, 2013, the Musée Café was still alive with chatter and laughter, a typical scene in this peaceful community. But just a few miles away, a ticking time bomb was on the move. Earlier that night, a freight train operated by Montreal, Maine, and Atlantic Railway, MMA, had pulled into the Nantes freight station. The train, stretching nearly a mile long, was hauling 72 tank cars filled with over 2 million gallons of crude oil. This cargo was a volatile mix, known as Bakken crude, notorious for being more flammable than standard crude oil due to its high concentration of volatile compounds. Tom Harding, the train's sole engineer, had followed what he believed were the correct procedures. He set the handbrakes on the locomotives and a few cars and left the lead engine running to maintain air brake pressure. However, the train had a history of issues, and on this night, it proved fatal. The lead locomotive's engine caught fire, likely due to substandard repairs that MMA had commissioned to save money. The local fire department quickly responded to the blaze, extinguishing it within minutes. But in doing so, they shut down the engine, unknowingly setting the stage for disaster. With the air brakes losing pressure and the handbrakes insufficient to hold the heavy train on a downhill grade, the train began to roll away, unmanned and unstoppable. The train, now a runaway juggernaut, barreled towards Lac-Mégantic. By the time it reached the town, it was moving at over 60 miles per hour, 6 times the speed limit for that section of track. As it hit a sharp curve in the tracks, the inevitable happened. The train derailed with catastrophic force. The derailed tank cars ruptured on impact, releasing a flood of crude oil that ignited almost instantly. The resulting explosions sent massive fireballs into the sky, with flames shooting hundreds of feet into the air. The Musée Café, once filled with joy, was now ground zero for the worst rail disaster in Canadian history. The explosions flattened everything, turning the heart of Lac-Mégantic into an inferno. The fire raged for nearly 2 days, with over 150 firefighters battling to contain it. The destruction was so complete that only one injured person arrived at the hospital. Everyone else in the immediate area had either escaped or perished. In total, 47 people lost their lives, their bodies so badly burned that DNA testing was required for identification. 5 of the victims were never found, believed to have been vaporized by the intense heat. The environmental impact was severe. Over 1.5 million gallons of crude oil spilled, with much of it seeping into the Chaudière River and Lac-Mégantic itself. This contamination rendered the area uninhabitable, forcing 1,000 residents from their homes and leaving another 1,000 in temporary shelters due to toxic fumes. The aftermath of the disaster revealed a shocking level of negligence. Harding, believing he had secured the train, had applied only a fraction of the necessary handbrakes, just 7, when regulations called for at least twice that number, given the train's weight and the incline of the tracks. Additionally, MMA's management practices came under intense scrutiny. The company had a history of cost-cutting measures that prioritized profits over safety, including using substandard parts in their locomotives, and reducing crew sizes to the bare minimum. In the days following the disaster, Harding, along with 2 other MMA employees, was charged with criminal negligence. However, their trial revealed that they were woefully undertrained and ill-equipped to handle the responsibilities placed on them by a company more interested in saving money than in ensuring the safety of its operations. The court ultimately acquitted all 3 men, with public sentiment largely in their favor. Many felt that the real culprits, MMA's top executives, and the regulatory bodies that allowed such practices to continue, had escaped justice. MMA declared bankruptcy shortly after the disaster, claiming it lacked the assets to compensate the victims. A settlement fund of $450 million was eventually established, paid by various companies involved in the disaster, but this was little consolation to the devastated community. In response to the disaster, both Canadian and American authorities implemented new safety regulations, including stricter standards for tank cars and mandatory speed limits in urban areas. However, the railway industry has been slow to adopt these changes, often citing economic concerns over safety. Today, Lac-Mégantic has been rebuilt, but the scars of that night remain. The downtown area has a new look, but for those who lived through the disaster, the memories of that fiery night are impossible to erase. The town that once thrived on the railway now stands as a stark reminder of the dangers of negligence and the human cost of cutting corners. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of the most devastating rail disasters in history. If you found this episode of Horror Funktown as haunting as we did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that uncover the dark side of history. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.